Okay, so here we go. Welcome to Proverbs. All right, it's the way of wisdom. We can all use more of that, right? So Proverbs is what we're doing. And the challenge that I give to you is to read one chapter every day. Be sure to take notes, have your notebook, something to write with, and your Bible handy. You should have it when you're doing your reading. And of course, I know it might be on your phone or whatever, that's fine. But take notes, things that pop out as favorites to you, things that you really like that you read, things that mean a lot to you. And then if you feel that God is speaking something to you, write it down, write it down. And then if you have any questions, write them down also, and then bring them to our meeting. And then of course, Saturday mornings, 8 o'clock, join the Zoom. Again, you might want to take notes, and then there'll be times to take part also. So always have paper and pen. Okay, something to prepare yourself. All right, knowledge and wisdom. Many people think they're the same thing, and that's not true. Knowledge and understanding and wisdom are all, there's three different things, and you can have knowledge but not be wise, not have wisdom. But you can't have wisdom without having some knowledge. Okay. Knowledge is learning things, the facts. You know, when we learn, we have the facts. That's knowledge. I put the facts in my head, tap it in there. But when we have wisdom, we're taking that knowledge and we're applying it, putting it to something. So you have to have the knowledge first and then do it. I may know it, but not do it. Like, I know that if I travel the speed limit, that I won't get a ticket. But am I wise? Do I always follow that? No. And what happens? Sometimes I get the ticket because I go faster. So I didn't use wisdom. I did not apply my knowledge. Okay. But God is where we get our wisdom. And how do we get that? We have to get it through the Bible, through his words to us. And this just shows that data is one thing, information is another. Knowledge is when we take that data and that information and we put it in, we keep it, remember it. That's like I can memorize a Bible verse. Like, for instance, John 3, verse 16, for God so loved the world. We all know that verse. We can quote it, right? But we have to add the wisdom to then apply it and believe it. Okay, you see that? Understanding is yet something else. It can be, it's somewhere in between your knowledge and your wisdom. We take in the knowledge and then we think, oh, I understand now that if I speed, I will get the ticket. So we have the knowledge, I have the understanding of it, but it still doesn't mean that I apply the wisdom. Wisdom can be defined as seeing a situation. Did we lose Nicole? Did she ever come back on? Wisdom can be explained as seeing a situation and seeing it the way that God sees it. Do we see and know that situation? We see it the same way that God looks at it. And then do we act on it? Do we do it and practice it the way God wants us to? And then are we learning from practicing that wisdom? So the more that we practice wisdom, the more we learn, which leads to more wisdom. All right. So, how do we get wisdom? And how many ask for wisdom? How many pray for wisdom? Solomon, he asked for wisdom, and it was his prayer that opened up vast riches. They still say he was the richest man that ever lived. It opened up his path to wealth and riches because he asked. And the one thing that he asked, he said if he could ask for one thing, it was wisdom. So he told God he wanted wisdom. So that's what we need to do also, is to ask for wisdom. Proverbs is called that book of wisdom because it teaches us so many different things. And so yet every morning, I ask God to please give me wisdom. I asked God this morning for wisdom as I teach, as I travel today. Give me wisdom, Lord. And then how many people actually pray for it and ask for it? So that's part of my challenge to you is as you read Proverbs, ask him for the wisdom. When you wake up in the morning, ask him for more wisdom for the day. Okay. Now, the book of Proverbs is collecting different essays, poems, just sayings, expressions, but they're all about wisdom and the wisdom that came for Israel. This is what Solomon's request was to have wisdom for the nation of Israel. Okay. And some of it, you know how we tell stories of well, back in the day, and we'll tell a story about how it was or how we did it. I can say that back in the day, I needed to go into a telephone booth to make a call. I couldn't just stand anywhere on the street and make a call. Okay, so that's how a lot of these things of wisdom came about, from things that people did and knew and practiced. So knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. That's a quote by Aristotle. And if we know ourselves, and how do we know ourselves? We first need to know God and who he says we are, and then increase from there. Good morning, Bonnie. And so knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. You will find that by reading Proverbs, you will know yourself better. Wisdom, wisdom, wisdom. Okay, so that's what we're going for, is wisdom. All right. Okay, now we're ready to start. And as I said, today we'll be looking at just some facts about Proverbs, and then starting 1 and 2. So Proverbs, again, it's the way of wisdom. Let me fix this better. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Proverbs, here we go. Okay, again, read one chapter every day, take notes, join on the Zoom, and always have your paper and pen ready. I'm going to tell you that a lot. Now, King David had a son named Solomon, and Solomon was his heir. And Solomon is the one who wrote the book of Proverbs. He didn't necessarily write them all, but he brought them all, got them all together and edited and whatever, okay? And so he's given most of the credit for this book of Proverbs. It talks about some people and some places and some things, but things that they knew in the day in Israel. But King Solomon, and then Agar and Lemuel were the people that actually did the writing. And this was about 900 years before Christ, during Solomon's reign, that he wrote these things. And there were people then that traveled from all over the world to come and see Solomon and all he had because of his wisdom, and to learn from him. It's the most important book of all the wisdom books in the Bible. There's 5 books in the Bible about wisdom, and they are Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and then the Song of Solomon. Those are all books about wisdom. Proverbs is considered to be the most important. Now, he teaches many things. He talks about the mind of God, the things that are most important to us, regular, ordinary things, everyday situations, our personal ways that we should act and do, our business, wealth, charity, your ambition, your discipline, your debt, how to raise your children, what's your character like, talks to you about alcohol, politics, revenge, and all of that, and godliness. Okay, all those things are gathered together and collecting his wise sayings that he gives to us through his book. This is a quote by Marilyn Voss Savant. I don't know her, but this is what she said. She said, to acquire knowledge, you must study. But to acquire wisdom, knowledge, you need to study. To get wisdom, you need to observe what you have already learned in the knowledge that you put in there. Now, this is by Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says, before we acquire power, we must first acquire wisdom to use it. You hear of, well, and we see it like in our government. People get into government and they're given the power, but they've not yet learned how to use it right. Okay, so we see those things happening all the time. So it was written, like I said, over 3,000 years ago. And even though it was written then, it impressed and impacted the people then, and it impacts us now the same way. And it just continues on and on and on. And first of all, it tells us to be smart. Be the smart cookie. Okay, be the smart one. Let your light bulb come on by studying wisdom. And then it says your habits make you smarter. Okay, but they make you smarter. And so what is a habit? It's something that we do again and again and again. And they say if you do something 21 times in a row, it becomes a habit. So let's let wisdom, Proverbs, become a habit. If you have nothing else to read or study, or you're wondering what, you can always pick up Proverbs, see what day it is. Is it, okay, today's the 2nd of the month. Okay, what's Proverbs 2 tell me today? You can always have it and learn from it. So let's be smart, and then trust God. Take our smarts, we're going to trust God with it, and then acquire the wisdom. And again, how do we acquire that wisdom? And I'm telling you, by studying Proverbs. we're going to acquire wisdom. So what happens if we do? It says that we will live long and that we will prosper. And that's not only in money and financial, but that we will just prosper and increase in life, in every area of our life. So smart people study Proverbs. And you will know that through the years and years and ages, people have studied Proverbs to run businesses. And they've taken some of the ideas and the principles of Proverbs to do their businesses. They apply it in their homes and in raising their children. And people will give testimony as to how Proverbs help them know how to live. And then even with controlling our life, addictions and the things that we do in life, the sexual things, all of that. If we apply the wisdom of Proverbs, all will go well. It was written, again, like I say, 3,000 years ago, but there was no plot and there was no storyline. And you know, how many times do you pick up a book? Oh, I love that book because it has such a good plot. It was such a good story. That's not Proverbs. It just gives us one thing after another, just continues on different things, but still it's a best seller. No plot, no storyline. And there was no special character in it. It wasn't like one person that goes through, like the book of Esther is about Esther. This is not about Solomon. It's about you, me, whoever reads it. It's for all of us to learn and to know how to have wisdom. We are think of yourself as the character. Put your name in it and think, oh, this is written for me. And the center stage of the book is wisdom. It's all about wisdom. So if you don't have any desire for wisdom, then don't do this study. Okay. Okay. So wisdom again can be explained as seeing it the same way God sees it, act on it as God wants us to, and then learn from it as God planned for us. The wisdom is true wisdom, and the true wisdom, the same as grace. It's alien, means that it's different, not known to the natural man. Okay, but wisdom is a divine gift, and God gives it to every believer. What? Who asks. So wisdom is not just given to you. You need to ask for it. All right. And in James 1 verse 5, it says, if any of you lack wisdom, ask God, because he will give it to you a whole lot, generously. He'll give it to you. But you've got to ask him for it. Now, in the book of Proverbs, chapters 1 through 9 talks about wisdom and folly, wisdom and foolishness. Okay, and explains and separates and shows the difference between wisdom and foolishness. And then chapters 10 through 24, it talks about how to have order in our own lives for yourself. And then chapters 25 through 29, it's the order of men and Hezekiah, like, you know, for the government and various things like that, okay? And then chapter 30 is the sayings of Agur. And then chapter 31 that we know as what? Many of us know that chapter 31 is the woman. It's all about the woman. And so when we get there, that's a good one to study. They're all good. But it's also the sayings of Lemuel. Okay. She's telling her son how to find a good wife and so on. So that's kind of our outline as we go. Also, the theme, of course, is the wise fear of the Lord, and how wisdom calls us. And the first call that it tells us is our salvation. Even though this is all before the time of Christ, it shows the picture of Christ. So it shows us a call for our salvation, for our wealth, and for our life. Foolishness calls us to different things, calls us to condemnation, to poverty, and to death. Okay, so wisdom or folly, you choose. There's comparisons, and then he gives us counsel throughout the book of Proverbs. So 3 things to understand Proverbs. First, notice that it's not that it's what we call a principle. It's not a promise. You know, we talk about the promises of Abraham, the promises of Christ, and so on. These are not promises, but they are principles. Matter of fact, if you do this, then that will happen. That's like in chapter 22, verse 6, it says, if you start a child in the way they should go, that when they're old, they will not leave it, not depart from it. Okay. So if then, that's what happens here. It's principle, not promise. Okay. And then it's what we call a pithy poetry. In other words, it means that like in 27 verse 6 is an example of this. It says, hurts from a friend you can trust, but an enemy will just multiply kisses. In other words, if we do something wrong and a good friend comes to us and says, hey, you know, maybe you shouldn't have done that, or you need to do this, or, you know, you say, oh, people are making fun of you. Well, why? You know, a friend tells you the truth. A true friend tells you the truth, but your enemy is going to just kiss up to you and make you think that, oh, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You know, so that's what it means by pithy poetry. It tells us things that, you know, if you hear it from a friend, you're going to receive it and accept it. But the enemy is going to try to cover it and hide it because they're going to use you in some way. All right. And then also the proverb has, you have the right perspective, the right outlook on things. Whoever needs to be taught, and you give instruction, you give, it will increase you and bless you. So when we get it and take it in and then pour it out, we're going to receive blessings from Proverbs. All right. It's the greatest how-to. We get books and we look up Google, how do I do this? How do I do that? So if you're seeking wisdom, you want to get wisdom, you want to understand wisdom, this is the user's guide, okay, for wisdom. So you will find how to live in a godly way and how to prosper and increase. All right. And you'll be satisfied. You'll have contentment. So it's our user's guide. It's our manual. How many of you get a manual for your car and then you never look at it? And often our manual, the Bible, I have a Bible. It's on my coffee table. Never open it, but I have the manual, okay? It's the same thing here with Proverbs. It's our manual to teach us everyday life. It gives us blessings, tells how to live a long life, how to prosper, how to have joy. how to have, goodness of God. So, and it also tells us that if we reject that, then we will suffer shame and death, So, but it will help. It gives assistance, support, gives us tips, guidance, advice, all of that is found in Proverbs. Who likes a good, y'all know I like chocolate, right? It's my favorite. I'm going to Ohio today. There's a place in Ohio called Haggie's. And I love the best chocolate. And my sister already said the first day we're going to go to Haggie's. Okay. So, but think of Proverbs like a box of chocolates. So good, so good. And we enjoy it. Sometimes we just put it in our mouth and just, then other times it will go quickly. And then sometimes we think, oh, I'll just skip over that one. That's not my favorite. It's the same way with the book of Proverbs. It's like that box of chocolates. Okay. We're going to, yeah, Bonnie.
I see. Sometimes we can't see your hands because of your background being blurred.
Oh, I see that that's happening, but I'm not. Oh, is that what? Oh, okay. Okay, I'll try to fix that. Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay. So Proverbs, we're going to have each chapter. I will do just a little summary, and I got them from this man, Keith Brooks. And anyway, this is just about the whole Proverbs. It's wisdom. And then there's 31 chapters. It says the key verse is chapter 9, verse 10. We'll get to that. And then it shows us that Christ is seen as wisdom, even though his name's not in the book, that you will see that it gives the showing of Christ. And then in the New Testament, there are times when Christ calls himself wisdom. And again, as the writer is Solomon, and it was about 990 to 995 before Christ. And it's just very, very practical. I see what's happening there in the world. Okay, so that's our intro to Proverbs. Now let me see if I can fix that, and then we'll move on to, we're going to talk chapter 1, just a few verses from chapter 1. Let's see. I may have to just I can't find it there quickly, but okay, well, I'll work on that. All right. So now let's look at chapter 1. I don't know if you all read it. Get in the line up here. Okay, so chapter 1 of Proverbs. It talks about children and men, and how if we turn away from wisdom and away from hearing God, it tells us what will happen. The character, it talks about God, and Solomon refers to in his son throughout. that God needs to be reverenced and served is shown through this, and that our knowledge, that God will give us perfection if we're in the center, if he's in the center of our life. The key word is wisdom. It's found in verse 2, and many, many verses in Proverbs have the word wisdom. Strong verses in 7 and 33, we'll look at those. In verse 20, it talks, it shows us about Christ pleading with sinners and what will happen, and then makes reference to things that you can compare it to Luke, even though, like I said, it doesn't say the name Christ here, but it shows us the things that are happening. So that's our start into chapter 1. Now, when we go through, we won't necessarily read every verse. I will pick some and we'll talk about. And then if you have some, when we finish in our time at the end, then we'll discuss and have questions on other verses or whatever, okay? All right. So first of all, in verse 1, it says that the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, who was the king of Israel. So it's telling us who is writing. Okay. Then in verse 2, he says, he's telling that he wants us to know wisdom and the instruction so that we can discern the words of understanding. Okay. So he's trying to give us wisdom so that we can learn and know to separate, discern for ourselves understanding. Now, this is verse 7. It says one of the most important. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools hate wisdom and instruction. How many of you know somebody will see something that, oh, I can do that, but they haven't read or haven't studied how to, and then they learn that they miss one important part or 2 or 3 important parts. It's because they have skipped over the learning part. Okay, so verse 7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And that's not fear like I'm afraid, but it's the fear of thinking, if I don't study this right and get this, I'll do things, I'll mess up everything. Knowing that we need to follow the Lord. Okay. And then in verses 8 through 9, he says, listen, my son, to your father's instruction. Now, what's that say? That means all of us, sons, daughters, people, need to listen to the Father, God our Father, and don't forget the things that our mothers teach us. In other words, in our homes and our families, if we have a good home and mothers are teaching us, sometimes, you know, when we get those teenagers, you know how they think, oh, mom said, dad said, what do they know? You know what I'm saying? Okay. So to remember the things that our Father teaches us and that he's always teaching us. And it says that it's a garland to grace. In other words, it's a garland, a beautiful necklace, or something worn around our neck. It's or we get a medal, we'll put it around our neck too. So we think that those are things that we get medals because of listening to the Father. Okay, so we need to listen, listen, listen. My son, if a sinner entices you, tempts you, okay, and this is in verse 10, and we all face this often, that we are tempted to do things. Like we're tempted to go speeding in the car. Maybe I'll get a ticket. You know, but my son, the sinner entices us. We're enticed for addictions. We're enticed for our actions to do things that are wrong. Says, do not agree to it. Do not consent to it. And it's our choice to say yes or no. All right, that's in verse 10. Wisdom cries out to us. In verses 20 through 33, we'll see that wisdom is just calling out, calling out, calling out, asking us to be wise in various things in our life. And we'll see through various things that it shows here. In verse 20, it says, true wisdom cries out loud in the streets, in public places, okay, at the corner of the busy streets, and at the entrance of the gates. Now, when he was writing this, they used to be at the gates of the city. People would be there, and that's where they would proclaim and teach about God and things. And they would walk down the streets and they would teach. Now, today we see some people on the streets. And again, we have to do things with wisdom. But here he's saying that true wisdom is not afraid to cry out and to tell people. In other words, wherever you are, stand up, tell people about God. If they look at you and say, you look different, what's different about you? It's God, the wisdom that God gave you. Okay. In 23, it says, if you had answered to God's rebuke, and he doesn't punish us, we don't need to think of it as punishment. We need to think it of as counsel, guidance. He'll correct us, but he doesn't really punish us. And many people think today, well, you know, I have this because, you know, God did this to me. God punished me with this sickness or with this accident. No, God doesn't do that. Okay. But he will give you his heart to make your thoughts known. So don't rebuke when those things happen. Okay. Don't blame God. He's not punishing you, but he can correct you through anything that Satan brings your way. So I've got my coffee right here. Pour out. Okay, so he says, I will pour out my spirit on you, and he will make his words known to you. So again, like I said, when you in the morning, if you pray for wisdom, and as you're reading that Proverbs and ask him, say, God, show me something from this chapter today. He says, surely he will pour it out on you, his spirit, and he will make the words known to you. You think, oh, it's just words. I don't get anything. Well, that's because you tell yourself, I'm not going to get anything out of this. Instead, tell yourself, I'm going to pray and ask God to let me see what he's pouring out on me through these words. Okay, it says in verse 28, it says, then they will call on him, on me, but he will not answer. Now, he has just explained about how people are doing things, not doing what he says, and how they are tempting and doing wrong things. And then all of a sudden they'll cry out. And it's like, he won't answer until they seek him first. It says, seek me early, because they won't find him. If you're not in that seeking mode, If you're just asking that, God, do this, God, please do this, do this, do this, but you're not seeking him for fellowship time with him, he won't answer, or at least you won't see it right away. Okay. And this one, verse 29 to 31 here, it says, you won't eat of the fruit of your own way, be filled with your own things. All right. That's if you trust yourself more than God, or you trust the friend, or the person who's tempting you. You take their fruits, then you're filled with your own wrongs and things inside, your own condemnation and all of that. But I love this one, 33, and I put it here, and you will see sometimes that I'll have 2 or 3 of the same verse to show you that in different translations, they will use sometimes some different words. And here in verse 33, he says, Lord, whoever listens to me will dwell secure, you're safe and secure, and you'll be at ease without dread of disaster. Like right now, in this season that we live in now, and with like the coronavirus and various things, how many people are just living in fear of getting sick? You know, or in fear of what the government's doing, whatever. Whoever listens to me, listen to me. And how do we hear him? We have to read and study his words to us. And then on the other one, the other side, it says, but whoever listens to me shall dwell safely and will be quiet from the fear of evil. So again, I want to show you just there's different ways of saying sometimes the same thing. And sometimes we understand one more than another. Another thing I might include in challenging you is don't just do Proverbs in July. You can do it every month. And I know one year I did that every month, and I did a different translation each month. So like one month I did the King James Version. One month I did the Amplified. One month I did, there's the New Living Bible. And there's so many variations. I did the Message, you know, or you can do them and compare them at the same time too. But it doesn't matter which one, choose one, read your chapters every day. Okay, so that's a few verses from chapter 1. I have just a couple from chapter 2. Do you have any questions on 1 before we move to 2? And I know you maybe haven't had a chance to start reading yet, but hopefully you will, and that you'll get going on this and challenge yourself. Okay, no questions. Let's move to chapter 2. I have just a few verses from chapter 2. And so again, our challenge, you know, take your notes, join the Zoom every day. And here's a few things about chapter 2. It's about how we get wisdom and use it, and just how much it gives to us because we read it. And again, it's about God and Solomon and his son, but how God has given us things that we need to know and understand to have wisdom, and that how he'll keep us from wrong things. All right. And then it talks about it talks to men about staying away from the harlot. And so women, we can apply that also to us, to not be the harlot, or to not get also involved with a man in the same way. Okay. Again, the key verse in this one is 7. There's strong verses in 6, 7, 21, 22. And then in 7, it says that wisdom is laid up for righteousness. In other words, if we, when we are saved and accept what Christ did on the cross, knowing that on the cross, he took our sin and gave us his righteousness. But this gives us wisdom to know, to have that righteousness and to move forward. Okay. Wisdom and knowledge. Here we go into chapter 2. And this is protection of wisdom. Okay. Some of the things that are in here, he talks to my child, he listens to me, and treasure. Key, in other words, key. If we treasure something, what do? Like our best china or our best jewelry, we put it in a box and we keep it safe, treasure wisdom that way. Turn your ears to the wisdom, think about it, understand it, cry out for more knowledge and understanding, search for it, and know that it is a hidden treasure, that you will understand it, means to fear the Lord, just like we said in chapter 1. Okay, so here we go. In verse 1, it says, my child, listen. Now he said that in chapter 1, listen. So maybe that's important, right? I know when I went to college, I had one professor that used to say, if I say something 3 times, know that it will be on a test. And so I think, okay, I got that. And so when we pay attention here to what he says again and again and again, because it'll be on our tests in life. So listen to what he's saying, treasure, keep the things that he commands us. All right. So pay attention, be attentive to wisdom. And then he tells us through verses 3 through 5, he tells us to cry out, to ask, to search and seek, and that you will get knowledge of God. Now, remember we said that knowledge comes before wisdom, that we have to have the knowledge and then apply it for it to become the wisdom. So cry out, ask, and remember, like I said, ask him for that wisdom every day. Seek it, ask, search, seek wisdom. I want wisdom. Give me wisdom. That's what Solomon asked for. And like I said, he was the wealthiest man in the world. And not just in things, but in his knowledge and understanding and how to raise his family and all of that. Okay. And you will get knowledge of God. So pay attention to those things. Seek and you will, we always say find, right? Okay. So know the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. It says in verse 6, it says, for the Lord gives wisdom. He gives us wisdom. But first, as we read in the just previous, we have to ask and seek for it. And then what? He will give it to us. And how? It says from his mouth, he gives us knowledge and understanding. And remember, we said we have knowledge and understanding before wisdom. All right, verse 7, very important verse. And here I have it 3 different ways, but it says he holds success. Okay, success for the upright. He is the shield to those who are blameless. Now, are you blameless? And you maybe will say, oh, no, 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 because I did wrong. But in God's eyes, you have no blame. So he holds success for you. And for you to be blameless, you have accepted Christ. He becomes our shield, our protector. And it says, he layeth up sound wisdom for the righteous. He is a buckler, which is also a shield, to those that walk right. It doesn't mean that we have to do everything right in our life, but it means that we have to put God first and walk in that wisdom that he is giving us. And it says that he keeps that wisdom for the right. And he's that shield and that protector if we are walking in and another way of saying the upright is integrity. Okay. If we walk in integrity, walk in the truth of his word, he will give us that guidance. Okay. He guards our pathway and he protects people that are faithful to him. He watches over all who are faithful to him. And what makes us faithful is the fact that we are just studying, we're trying, we're praying, we're seeking, all these things. That makes us faithful to him. And it says he will watch over us, keep and protect, be that shield for all of us who look at him. And then the other thing is that when wisdom comes into your heart, knowledge is pleasing to your soul because you need that knowledge to find the wisdom. But when you're happy and love the knowledge, okay, then you will have discretion and it will keep you, and then understanding will keep you. So again, showing us that we take the knowledge, the understanding, and we have to love those portions. We can't just jump quickly to the wisdom. We must have the knowledge. I have a love of knowledge. I've always been a studier, and I went to school and to college, and I study this, I study that. But now my favorite thing to study is the Word of God. And I am growing more than ever because that's my first love of study. I want more knowledge, more understanding, because I want the wisdom of God. So your heart, do you have God's wisdom in your heart? And then this is just another way of showing it is that when wisdom comes into your heart and knowledge is pleasing to you, okay, discretion will keep you and understanding will keep you. So you have wisdom, knowledge, discretion, and understanding. All come from wisdom. Wisdom will save you from evil people. Okay, that's in verse 12, but verse 11 says if you choose, it's your choice to follow good counsel, divine plan will watch over you, and understanding will protect you from making bad choices. So right here in chapter 2, he's telling us we need to practice good choices. We need to have the understanding, the knowledge, and then wisdom will keep you from the evil people. The temptations will continue to come, but we need to have the wisdom to keep us and protect us from it. So if we want to get away from the evil people, we need to walk in wisdom. It will save you from the ways of wicked people. and don't walk that straight path, it's going to protect us and keep us. And so right here in chapter 2, he just writes it all out, what it'll protect you from. Wisdom saves you from the immoral woman. This is what I said, you know, the flattery, the flirtation of the adulterous woman. She has left her husband while he's away. She doesn't honor her marriage commitment. And then the man who visits her, he's doomed. Okay, because he knows he's going with a woman that is not right and not doing right. And so it tells us there, and it talks about the man, but remember, we can apply it to ourselves as women also. Okay, but we can be delivered from all of that by just seeking that wisdom, having the knowledge, the understanding, and seeking the wisdom. Okay. And then in verse 20, it says that you can walk in the way of good man and keep the path of righteousness. So if we follow the steps of the good and stay on the paths of righteousness, then only the godly will live in that place. And your integrity will remain with you. So we need to walk in that. The upright, they will dwell in the land, and the blameless will stay in it. In other words, when we walk right, we will live in that good place, a place that he will give to us and take care of us. And there'll be others there that we can join with. And we can stay there in it. All right. And then verse 21, again, it says the same thing. For the upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the earth. Now, as we saw in Revelation, we saw what happens to them in the end, right? But now it's telling us way back here in Proverbs that they'll be cut off from the earth, and the transgressors will be, they'll end up rooted out. In other words, they'll be pulled out by their roots and sent away. All right. All right. So that's chapter 2. Just some of the verses. Like I said, it's not all of them. Again, any questions anywhere from either one? Just a reminder, your assignment is to read a chapter a day. Take notes, find your favorites, the ones that mean the most to you, what God is saying to you, and any questions you have. And then join me again next Saturday, and we'll talk about chapters 3 through 9 and some other things about Proverbs. Okay. So here we are. Let me stop recording. Any questions, anybody? Everybody's quiet today.